Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sonny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sonny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sonny Hostin thought her day couldn't get any worse, until Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus rolled in like a tag team of sarcasm-wielding flamethrowers. What started as a bad day quickly exploded into a full-on comedy roast, her husband's jaw-dropping $450 million court scandal. That was just the appetizer. What came next? A public takedown so brutal, it could have been pay-per-view. Tyrus didn't pull punches. Gutfeld didn't skip a beat. And Sonny? Her silence was so icy, it could have won an Oscar for Best Performance in a meltdown. But what explosive detail triggered this spiral into courtroom chaos? Stick around. You won't believe how deep this rabbit hole goes.
About 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Sonny Hostin has spent years on The View casting herself as the Supreme Court of daytime TV, gavel in one hand, moral superiority in the other. She doesn't just share opinions, she issues verdicts. One wrong take and you're exiled from brunch. But this week? The self-appointed queen of legal virtue found herself center stage in a scandal that's as shocking as it is ironic. A $450 million courtroom catastrophe with her very own husband in the lead role.
Husband or man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
Cue the irony, cue the popcorn, and cue Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus revving up their sarcasm engines like they're prepping for a roast on Mount Olympus. For years, Sonny Hostin has made a career out of being perpetually outraged, offended on cue, morally incensed, flabbergasted at the drop of a hot take. On a show that often feels more like an emotional cage match than a conversation, Sonny's always been the self-appointed guardian of righteousness. But now, with her husband allegedly neck-deep in a financial fiasco that makes FTX look like a middle school bake sale, suddenly it's all about privacy and due process. Oh, the irony.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sonny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sonny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sonny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
When someone else is under fire, Sonny serves up righteous fury with a side of thinly veiled contempt. But when the spotlight turns to her own husband, crickets. The loudest legal voice on The View has suddenly discovered the sweet, sweet serenity of silence. Bravo. Now, enter stage right, Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus, two men packing enough sarcasm to power a small nation, and you better believe they weren't about to miss the chance to tear into this hypocrisy sandwich, bite by glorious bite.
Makes Sonny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
The timing? Almost too perfect. Greg Gutfeld, who's made a career out of exposing media hypocrisy with the wit of a stand-up comic and the aim of a sniper, practically threw a party on air. And Tyrus? He might as well have brought marshmallows to toast over the smoldering wreckage of Sunny Hostin's credibility. So let's talk about this $450 million scandal, shall we? According to swirling reports and some very enthusiastic social media threads, Sunny's husband has allegedly found himself smack in the middle of a courtroom catastrophe so sprawling it makes Enron look like a misplaced receipt. Allegations range from financial mismanagement to potential fraud, but hey, who's counting? Certainly not Sunny. The same woman who's made a career out of dissecting others' legal woes with surgical precision has suddenly gone quieter than a malfunctioning Alexa. It's as if someone unplugged her inner prosecutor and replaced it with a dial tone. And it's not just the size of the scandal, though. Make no mistake, it's massive. It's the irony. This is a woman who spent years circling the legal troubles of others like a hawk spotting roadkill. When a Republican gets sued, Sunny's already halfway through her opening argument. But now that her own backyard is engulfed in legal flames, suddenly it's all no comment and let's not speculate. That's not just ironic, it's practically performance art. And Gutfeld? He didn't waste a second. He launched into a segment that was less news commentary and more full-blown roast battle.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead,
if hypocrisy were an Olympic sport, Sunny Hostin just took home the gold. Greg Gutfeld dissected the double standard with the glee of a kid unwrapping Christmas presents. And in the background, you could practically hear Tyrus sharpening his verbal machete, and oh, did he swing it. Never one to pull punches, Tyrus delivered zingers with the effortless swagger of a man who's endured one too many episodes of daytime TV and finally snapped. He didn't just call out the scandal. He went after the smugness, the sanctimony, and the stunning collapse of credibility that came with it. Because when the self-declared queen of condescension loses her crown in a blaze of scandal, you can bet Tyrus is right there with a velvet pillow to scoop it up, and let's not forget the View co-hosts, the rest of the panel. These paragons of progressive outrage went from courtroom crusaders to a synchronized choir of silence in record time. Joy Behar, usually loud enough to be heard in the next zip code, looked like she'd seen a ghost. And Whoopi Goldberg, often overflowing with moral monologues, barely managed a shrug. Apparently, when Sunny's name is on the legal docket, the outrage meter suddenly runs out of batteries. These are the same people who once threw a multi-segment meltdown because a conservative mispronounced a word, but now, nothing but crickets.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for her asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler, they call these things. America rejected them. And instead of coming back and saying, we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
But a $450 million case involving one of their own? Suddenly, it's all very complicated, nuanced even. How convenient. Meanwhile, social media lit up like a match in a fireworks factory. Memes flooded timelines. Twitter didn't just roast. Sunny, it flambéed her. Greg Gutfeld, ever the opportunist with perfect comedic timing, seized the moment to make a broader point. Media elitism, the age-old tendency of public figures to demand accountability from everyone except themselves. Because let's face it, the moral high ground is only fun when you're the one standing on it, not when it's crumbling beneath your feet. With his signature deadpan, Gutfeld pointed out that for a show built on truth and transparency, the iGuard View is suddenly developing a very selective form of laryngitis. Then came Tyrus, armed with wit as dry as desert sand. He torched the idea of Sunny offering legal advice to viewers while allegedly helping draft public statements to explain away her husband's misunderstood financial nightmare. The only thing more confusing than the charges: Sunny's moral compass now spinning faster than a politician strapped to a polygraph.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner. Kat, just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what, like, they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
And the cherry on top, The View pretended it didn't happen. Not even a segment. Not even a sentence they could dedicate 20 minutes to Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriends, but not 1 minute to the $450 million elephant rampaging through Sunny's personal life. Maybe they were just being classy, or maybe they were being cowardly. You decide. Gutfeld closed his segment with what might be the most poetic bit of irony. TV has seen in years. He pondered ever so innocently if Sunny would like to come on his show and talk about the value of accountability. The invitation, of course, was dripping with sarcasm, irony, and enough shade to make sunglasses mandatory and Tyrus. He simply leaned in, looked at the camera, and gave one of those signature smirks that says, "We told you so." But it's not just about Sunny. This scandal is a mirror for the larger hypocrisy parade marching through mainstream media. These talking heads love to paint themselves as beacons of justice, but when the lights hit their own skeletons, it's suddenly theater of the absurd. They quote laws like scripture until someone points out their own commandments are printed on toilet paper.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. Mm-hmm. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Sunny's defenders argue that she shouldn't be judged for her husband's actions. And sure, on paper, that sounds reasonable. But this is the same woman who picked apart the families of political rivals like she was auditioning for CSI, Political Hypocrisy. Now suddenly she wants the benefit of context? That's not just a double standard. That's a double-decker of irony with a side of denial. The fallout is only just beginning. More details are likely to come to light, and Sunny may soon find herself doing more than just pouting through commercial breaks. Maybe a public statement, a brief leave of absence, or perhaps a little more emphasis on her trademark resting smug face. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. The credibility hit has already gone nuclear. Let's be real. The View was never exactly a beacon of journalistic integrity, but this scandal has pulled back the curtain on whatever was left of its credibility, revealing a group of panelists frantically scrambling to protect their own like it's a daytime mafia. If you tuned in expecting self-awareness or accountability, forget it. These are people who could trip over their own contradictions and still blame Republicans. The idea that they might reflect, admit their own hypocrisy, or even laugh at the absurdity of it all is about as likely as Sunny presenting her husband's bail paperwork live on air.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
If The View had a mute button for awkward scandals, Sunny Hostin hit it with the urgency of someone trying to save their own reputation, because in this case, that's exactly what was on the line. Suddenly, the queen of legal monologues, interruptions, and unsolicited law school reenactments decided it was time for some strategic silence. The same woman who could filibuster through a 7-second clip of a squirrel sneezing on Capitol Hill somehow forgot how to speak when the conversation turned to her husband's jaw-dropping $450 million courtroom drama. Coincidence? Sure. And Pigs just launched a startup. Gone were the smug cross-examinations. Gone were the legal buzzwords no one asked for. Sunny, the eternal justice warrior, had morphed into Sunny, the human screensaver. Viewers watched in stunned silence as she perfected the art of blinking slowly and rearranging her note cards into something that vaguely resembled a legal plea deal. It was like watching a defense attorney play charades during a tax audit. Every sideways glance, every suspicious sip from her mug, every twitchy shuffle of paper screamed, "Please don't ask me about the giant felon-shaped elephant tap dancing through this segment." And her body language? Let's just say she was channeling, full-on courtroom mime, arms crossed tighter than a tax loophole, shoulders tense enough to slice deli meat. One moment, she's nodding like a bobblehead at a law conference. The next, she's zoning out so hard, you'd think she was counting ceiling tiles for legal advice.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Somewhere between Whoopi's eye rolls and Joy's derailed tangents, Sunny sat frozen like she'd just seen her husband's bail terms etched on her note cards. And the best part? When things got spicy, when any topic veered even 10 inches, toward corruption, fraud, or high-profile embarrassment, Sunny suddenly developed an intense fascination with staring into the abyss. She had that look on her face like she was trying to telepathically disappear. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Viewers saw it, Twitter saw it, Greg Gutfeld saw it, and Gutfeld doesn't even blink. Let's be real, Sunny's usual MO is hijacking a conversation mid-sentence with a sharp, "Actually, that's not how due process works." But now, the only thing she's lawyering up is her facial expression. Because oops, turns out the due process in question is happening to her own husband. In the courtroom, the interruptions that once made her the loudest voice in the room have now become the ghosts of her credibility. She sits, she blinks, she sips from that oversized mug like it's been spiked with vanishing cream. Meanwhile, viewers are perched on the edge of their seats, wondering if she'll finally snap and yell, "Objection!" at her own reflection. The silence isn't golden. It's desperate. A last-ditch attempt to dodge, deflect, and outlink a scandal that's way too massive to hide.
Anna went in a different direction. But I love the fact that, you know, Manny is younger and he's
How much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years?
5 years. It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think.
Oh, no.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy stuff.
Sorry, Sunny, but you can't cross-examine karma. Still, Gutfeld and Tyrus provided the catharsis America didn't know it needed. In a world where double standards reign supreme and sanctimonious finger-pointing has become a professional sport, watching the mighty stumble is more than satisfying. It's practically therapeutic. Will Sunny recover? Probably. The View has a long shelf life for its hosts. Scandals are like seasoning, as long as they vote the right way. She might even rebrand this whole mess as a learning experience and give a TED Talk titled, "When Justice Hits Close to Home." Until then, the memes will keep rolling, the internet will keep laughing, and Gutfeld and Tyrus will keep circling the hypocrisy like vultures with punchlines. Because when you spend your career handing out moral judgments, it's only a matter of time before the gavel swings back. And in Sunny's case, it swung hard enough to knock the smug right off her highlight reel. So next time The View serves up another moral lecture, remember, even the loudest voices can choke on their own script, especially when Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus are holding the receipts and the punchlines. Because if this is how Sunny handles legal crises, we can't wait to see how she handles daytime ratings.